Hi, everyone. Welcome to our weekly chat. It is our pleasure and our honor to be able to share this moment with you each week. My name is Estefani. I'm one of the volunteers at the Paul and Stephen Spiritus Center in Melbourne, Australia. And we always like to start our chats by acknowledging the traditional custodians of this land that we are in, which are the Aboriginal people, by paying our respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. And as usual, I also like to take a moment before we really get going for us to connect with one another and with ourselves. Just because we are not together physically doesn't mean that we can't get in the same wavelength. So if it's okay with you, let's close our eyes. Let's take a deep breath in. Make sure that you can feel that breath filling in not just your chest, but your belly as well, like the babies do. Big breath in. And as you release that breath, you do it fully, all the way out, feeling like all that negativity is leaving your body with the air that you are exhaling. And take another deep breath in, visualizing positive energy coming in with the air that's filling your lungs and your body. And you breathe out any lingering stress, even if it's just for this little nugget of time we're together. It's still worth putting everything else aside for a few minutes. And take one more deep breath in, full of peace and contentment. And as you breathe out, assure yourself that anything else that was bothering you is now leaving. It's leaving your body along with the air that you're expelling. And now feeling more at ease in our bodies, in our hearts, in our minds, in our spirits, let's take this opportunity to all together say the prayer that Jesus taught us himself when he was here. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For yours is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. So be it. You may open your eyes back again. Thank you. Today's chat is mostly based on the Spirit's book, which is not only one of those foundational books we talk so much about in the Spiritist philosophy, but it's also the very first book that was produced by Allan Kardec along with the Spirits. And this book, the Spirit's book, contains over 1,000 questions and answers about pretty much every topic you can imagine. It's really one of those reference books. It's not a book that you just read once and that's it. You've ticked that box, but it's a reference book. It's a book that we study and that we go back to again and again, because as we grow and evolve as people, the words in the book actually reveal more and more meanings. So every time you go back to a passage or that you have another look at the book, it feels like you learn something new, because we're no longer the same person. We are constantly evolving and progressing. So, and the Spirit's book is divided into 4 books. And today's chat is based on book 3, which is about the moral laws, chapter 9, which talks about the law of liberty or freedom, and specifically the section about free will, which covers questions and answers 843 to 850. Obviously, I've done lots of research in different places that I couldn't mention all of it. And the topic is called today, All Choices Have Consequences. But yeah, there's a little bit of lots of things in here, but this is the main source. And it starts by saying that all human beings have freedom of thought and freedom of action, and that without those, we would be nothing more than machines. So basically, free will is an essential part of being human. And then they go on to explain that our free will grows as does our ability to act on it, right? And they use an example to explain this with children, right? So when children are small, their free will is quite limited because they really depend on their carers for most things. However, it's really clear to see that as children grow, they do everything they can to start asserting their free will, right? However limited, they do it in the things that they have some control over. So, everyone has had the opportunity to see that child that will only drink from a specific cup or will only go to sleep with a particular toy, right? As they grow, they start to try to have a bit of choice, whatever little amount of choice they can have, So this is something that goes on throughout our lives. Even little babies who, can't really do very much, but they still, you try and keep feeding a baby when they've had enough, they will not take it. They will not take it. If a baby wakes up, everybody wakes up. Whatever limited radius of action they have, they also assert their will over that. So it's something that is inherently human. It's part of our essence as people, right? But a lot of people mistake the meaning of free will. A lot of people think free will is about freedom of actions, which is true. It is that. But most importantly, free will is about freedom of choice. So unlike what most people think, or not most people, but a lot of people think that, if everybody has free will and can do whatever they want, then the society will collapse because no one will follow the rules. And, what we need to realize, because that is not the whole truth, or not at all the truth, because what we need to realize is that everything we do in this life is our choice. There will always be good and bad choices. And our mission, should we choose to accept it, is to do everything within our power to make the right choices. Because, as the title mentions of today, all choices have consequences. So our free will is not about doing whatever, and then just, it is about the freedom of choice and making the correct choices, or realizing that when we don't make the correct choices, that we'll have to deal with that at some point in time. We don't know if it's going to be in an hour, or if it's going to be in a day, or if it's going to be in a year, or in the next lifetime. We don't know, but we are going to have to deal with that at some point. So if we can actually figure it out fairly early on and and deal with that and try to correct that and not create those situations anymore, not make those choices anymore, or perhaps if we have done some damage to our lives or someone else's lives or to the environment or whatever, that we can do our best to correct whatever it is that we have done, right? So in our life, we spend most of our time dealing with the consequences of our choices, of our actions, right? If we're not making new choices, we're dealing with consequences of previous choices. oftentimes we're doing both at the same time. We're making choices because we're having to deal with consequences of previous choices. Sorry about the noise, can't be helped. But yeah, so this is one of the reasons why the Spiritist philosophy is so adamant that we need to educate ourselves. Like they're always telling us to learn, to study, to be aware, because when we are educated, and not just intellectually, but spiritually as well, we can make better choices. A lot of people say when you know better, you do better, right? Because when you don't know, it's very hard to actually be able to know when something is right or wrong. And many times in history, the masses have followed blindly after people that did not have their best interests at heart. So in the books, they tell us that don't just take anyone's word just without thinking. Always check in with your conscience. The conscience is where we store all of the teachings of all our time here on all our lifetimes and all our existence and all of the teachings that we've acquired, and it is all stored in there. So we should always check, is this right? Is this fair? Is this good? Is this for, we should always just check. It's okay to trust, but first verify. A very wise man, I heard a very wise man say one time, trust, but verify. So, we should always check with our conscience to see if it's the right thing. And then it leads us to another thing we talk very often about, which is the inner reform. Because the inner reform is an attempt at making better life choices, at understanding where we have gone wrong and doing our best to right those wrongs. Some things have been there in us for such a long time that if we don't actually pay attention, we're never going to even realize that there is something there, that there's something that we tend to do that is not great. And we do that all the time because we're so used to it. So we really have to look within and do that work. And by doing that work, by becoming better people, we make better choices. We make better use of our free will. It's all connected. It's always a circle. It's never just one thing or another thing, right? We're very, we do this very often, sometimes we might go to the doctor, and I'm just picking something out of like just anything, just as an example. It's not like I'm no doctor or anything, but let's say you go in and you have a problem and it turns out that it's your thyroid. And then oftentimes people will just focus every effort on just the thyroid when it's very, very, very likely that your thyroid is stressed out because of other issues in your body, right? So it's starting, there is quite a big movement of looking at things more holistically. But, this applies to everything in life. It's like you see a person and on that particular day or moment, they're not in a great mood, and you look at them and you're like, oh, I'm not sure I like this person. And then, if you actually get the chance to actually meet that person and see, their environment around them, the people, how they grew up, their experiences, a lot of times it's a lot easier to understand why they may be a certain way. So there's always more to the story rather than just what, like the first impression or the outward appearance. So it's similar with this, with the free will, with the inner reform, and with the freedom of choice and freedom of action. It's not just about just doing whatever you feel like at the time. It's about being the best that you can be so that you can make the better choices all the time. And when you don't do it, then when you don't make a good choice, to realize what you've done and go about sorting it out. So, and when we get to that stage, hopefully we can do like the amazing Nelson Mandela would say, that we make out that he hoped that we would make our choices based on our hopes and not our fears. Because there are many, many things that drive us to make certain, like lots of choices, isn't it? Some choices we make because we believe in them, some we make because we are afraid of what might happen, and some we just make because everyone else is making it. There's just so many reasons. So ideally, we would always be connected enough to make sure that the choices that we make are the best ones for us and respect everyone else. And everyone else around us, because it's very important to always remember that our freedom, it has limitations in terms of the freedoms of other people. We can't just think that any one of us has a greater right to freedom than anyone else. We should all have the same same rights and freedoms as everyone else. So, and another thing that a lot of people become even more confused is that a lot of religions are based on discipline, on following, that particular religion's moral codes or behavioral guidelines, right? And people think that, you are a good member of that religion if you do exactly as it says by the letter. And Spiritism is sometimes a little bit difficult to follow because it actually gives you more freedom. Like Paul, the apostle, used to say, everything is permissible to me, but not everything is beneficial. Which it means, yeah, sure, you can do everything, or at least most things, but a lot of those things are not in your best interest. And it's something that we have to always keep in mind. Are we acting in our best interest? Are we acting in the best interest of humanity? So, or at very least those around us. So it's something that we need to always be thinking about. And it sounds like a lot of hard work, but as we do the inner reform and we become better people, those choices become more instinctual than hard work. It is hard work at the start, but good people just good people. We're all good people, but more evolved people naturally seem to make better choices because that's what they're used to. That's their habit. That's the muscle that they've trained. The same way that when we don't look after these aspects, we instinctually seem to make all the bad choices, right? So it is in working in ourselves that we're going to achieve that sort of point where we just naturally tend towards the better choices rather than the ones that are not so great. Yeah. And sometimes that can be tiring, and some people just prefer to be told what to do and how to behave. And it's certainly easier at the moment, like at that particular time. It's easier not to think or not to have to worry about things. But when we do the work, the inner work, and we attune ourselves with the higher levels of conscience or consciousness, we can see things a lot more clearly. And it is a little bit like Jesus used to say about the wide door and the narrow door. Sometimes the wide door, it's easy to go through, but it doesn't lead to a good place. The narrow door or the narrow hallway might be a little harder to get through, but then it leads us to it is a lot, to a much better destination. So basically, discipline needs to be understood as not just following the rules without any questions, but understanding why you are doing what you're doing and why you believe that that is the right thing to do. Then follow the rules. I'm not suggesting anybody break them, but it is important to understand why. Why is it that you do what you do, and why is it that you think is the right thing? Because so many times throughout history, things that everyone thought were the right thing were then proven later on to not be so great. So we need to always have that awareness and that curiosity and that sort of, to be tuned in to what we're doing and why we're doing it. And and we have a very well-known example that happened to our very beloved medium Chico Xavier in terms of discipline. Because I'm trying to sort of talk about discipline and free will and show that they're not opposites in the scale; they're actually interconnected. So Chico was a medium his entire life. There is a movie about him, and if you've seen it, you will see that from a very young age, he saw and he connected and he spoke to the spirits. But in terms of working in the spiritist philosophy, he only did that as an adult because that's when he found out that it actually existed, and he ended up writing more than 400 books and being a really remarkable example to this day, even though he's already moved on to the next phase of his life. And he was helped throughout his spiritist journey by the spirit Emmanuel. And Emmanuel has a fascinating story, which we cannot even touch on today. There is no time. Oh, goodness. I thought I was going to be quicker today, but yeah, I'll do my best. But anyway, so Emmanuel guided Chico through many difficult situations, but he was also a really tough taskmaster. And in their first session, discussing the work that they were going to undertake, Emmanuel told Chico that he was going to have to be extremely dedicated in terms of work and study and being an agent for good, a force for good in the world. And Chico was understandably intimidated by everything that was being laid ahead of him, and he was a bit concerned about whether he was going to be able to do all of that. Was he good enough for all of that? Can't we all relate to that feeling at times? And then Emmanuel told Chico that he would be fine so long as he observed the three main points. The first one was discipline. The second one was discipline. And the third one, I'm sure you've guessed it, discipline. And I personally struggle with discipline, so I always felt quite sorry for Chico having to live up to all that, even knowing, as I do know, that all of these types of advices are never just for the person receiving the advice at the time, especially when we are reading and talking about it not thousands, goodness, but many, many years later, right? So this type of advice is for all of us, right? So, but a lot of people infer from that Emmanuel was saying that discipline was so important that it was virtually all that was needed to succeed in the task. And while discipline is extremely important, that advice was actually going a little bit beyond that usual interpretation. Because there are several types of disciplines that we, like Chico, need to observe, right? So when he says there's three disciplines, we need to think that there's, number one, there's discipline of thought. Number two, there's discipline of words. Number three, there's discipline of actions. And really, I would add a fourth discipline to that, which is the discipline of our feelings and our emotions, right? Because if we don't discipline our thoughts, it's very hard to control our words. And we know that our words can both cure and wound depending on how we use them, isn't it? They are like the knife. They can help, but they can kill as well. So, and if we don't have discipline of thoughts and words, it's very unlikely that our actions are going to be always for our good and the good of others. And if we don't discipline our feelings and our emotions, they can sometimes overrule our thoughts and our words and lead us to take on very erratic or sometimes disastrous actions. So, it's not just about, discipline, it's like there's different types of things that we need to watch out for and discipline ourselves, or to have some measure of, let's say, control or that we should be paying attention to. We can't always control everything. We can barely ever control everything or anything, but we need to be mindful of, we need to pay attention to, we need to work on. And like I said before, I know it sounds like a lot of work, but it's all connected, because once you start working in one of them, it has a positive effect on the other, right? So there's a flow on effect. It's like a circle. It's synergetic. You work on one, the other ones improve as well, until eventually it's more natural to you to do the right thing than it is to do the wrong thing. But, that doesn't happen just by itself. Unfortunately, I've always wanted to wake up one day and just be all good. And, so going back to the relationship with free will, like I mentioned before, they are not opposites at all. A lot of people think that you're either very disciplined or you're very free. No. The discipline, those types of disciplines will lead us to make better choices, and that will let us make better use of our free will, right? It's, there's always more to the story. And so, it's a very interesting time to be talking about these things, because in the current scenario that we're living through, especially in Melbourne, it feels like all our social freedoms and human rights are just disappearing on a daily basis, isn't it? And I certainly don't have the magnanimity of someone like Nelson Mandela, who endured many years of injustice and tyranny without letting hatred take over his heart, which is, an example that we must never forget, because I know how so many of us are struggling with the situation we find ourselves in. I certainly am included in that group. But having spent the time studying about this topic, and it's no coincidence the topics that we get, it doesn't get any easier to prepare these chats, but it is always amazing how, things that were planned, weeks and months in advance, come up to at the exact right time, and hopefully to the exact right person that needs them the most. But and I'm talking about both me and whoever is out there listening. Please say hello. But yes, having studied the topic, what I can say to all of us, me included again, is that we have to continue to do the work within ourselves. We have no control over so many things that are happening. We have no controls over the actions of others. Sometimes, don't you just feel like you do everything, you do your best, and the other person doesn't respond? The other person will need to do their own work. It's always great when we can evolve as a group, isn't it? We certainly try that a lot in places like the Spiritist Centers, especially when we're all together. But it starts with us. It starts with each one of us. So, we are, we need to continue to try to be the best people that we can. We need to continue to work on being kind, on being forgiving, on accepting each other, on remembering that we're all connected. We are in a transition phase. There is no doubt about it. We're all being tested. And it is in how we get through the crisis moments, that we really show what we have learned. It's not about a test where we answer questions. It's not about, being able to talk or being able to understand things. It's really in how we get through these tough times that we really demonstrate, how far along we are in our journey of evolution. And it is very important that we pay attention, because unfortunately we have not always learned. We've gone through as people, we have through many periods of crises and in the past, and we have to stay hopeful and do everything we can to make sure this time is different, because we haven't always really taken all the lessons we could from the difficult times. And so, with all the hope and faith in my heart, in our hearts, I hope that this is the time that we really learn and we really go forward. You see, there is a quote I want to read from Nikola Tesla, and he said that such a long time ago, and we're still searching for it. And my hope is that we will find it soon. And Tesla said, referring to the war, remember how long ago that was? He died during the Second War, so I'm pretty sure he was saying that about the first one. He said, out of this war, the greatest since the beginning of history, a new world must be born, a world that would justify the sacrifices offered by humanity. This new world would be a world in which there shall be no exploitation of the weak by the strong, of the good by the evil, where there will be no humiliation of the poor by the violence of the rich, where the products of intellect, science, and art will serve society for the betterment and beautification of life, and not the individuals for achieving wealth. This new world shall not be a world of the downtrodden and humiliated, but of free people and free nations, equal in dignity and respect. Here's hoping. Let's now move on to our final prayer and vibration. So if you don't mind closing your eyes again, taking another deep breath, feeling comfortable physically, and tuning into a vibration of love and peace. So we imagine a bright white light emanating from our hearts. And with each pulse of our heart, which is a muscle that never stops pulsing, this light is being beamed to every corner of our body through our veins. And this light is completely cleansing and energizing our entire being. And it does so completely that we start to emanate this light beyond our physical body. And we have enough of it to share with the rest of the world. And we are going to imagine our bright light filled with love and filled with good vibrations, reaching out to all the people in the world who are in such need of light, in need of love, in need of goodness, in need of guidance. Our light is reaching far and wide to all areas of our beautiful blue planet and beyond. And with the help of our spiritual mentors and our guardian angels, who will make sure that our light and our vibrations and good wishes will reach all the places where they are most needed. I know we like to normally send vibrations to our families and our loved ones, but I'd really like us to send them to the entire world and remind ourselves that we are all one big family. We are all connected. Let's all send our love to each other, no matter who they are. You may open your eyes again. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's always a pleasure. And before we go, as usual, I just like to quickly mention our charity works, both here in Melbourne and here in Melbourne with the homeless, and in Brazil with providing basic necessities for those people who are really doing it tough. We appreciate immensely any help you are able to provide. If that's financially, you can deposit in our bank account. We've got details in our website and social media, or you can reach out to any one of us. And if you'd like to at some point participate in person here in Melbourne, that would also be very welcome. Of course, with the lockdown and current mandates, it's all a little bit complicated, but you are most welcome to, talk to us should you wish to participate. And also, we were supposed to have a live musical event tonight. Hopefully, you would have seen the notes and the posts that we've been putting that mentioning that it's been postponed. We do apologize for that. We are still working on creating an even better event at a later date, and we'll let you know when we've got that organized. But that's it for me today. I'd like to wish you a fantastic week, and take care and much love. Bye.